Stephen Wiltshire is not an ordinary young man. He's a human camera. Take a look. A few hours before, he flew for a few minutes over the center of London for the first time in his life. Then Stephen was brought to this large drawing board. This is where the incredible begins. Without hesitating and without doing any sketches beforehand, he drew the buildings with their exact proportions. Everything is there. And he detailed the streets as he photographed them. Where does he get his strange talent? They are prodigies in drawing, music, or calculus. They are autistic people who have Savant syndrome. He has been named the Little Mozart of jazz. How did little Matt Savage discover piano in one night? Trance, ecstasy, meditation? Do altered states of consciousness reveal an unknown part of ourselves? Can the brain of a believer be scientifically studied? Does faith leave a trace in the brain? Now that science has new machines to explore the human mind, can it unveil the hidden side of the brain? What do we know about the human brain? Approximately what we know about the tip of an iceberg. And the iceberg brain is really huge. 100 billion brain cells and 500 billion possible connections between them. There are as many stars in the whole universe. In the history of brain exploration, unusual behaviors have often allowed knowledge to progress. Today, that's the case of people who have Savant syndrome. This is 2003 in Quebec. Julien is 9 years old, and he has pervasive development disorder. In his case, it's autism. At the request of his parents, we've hidden his face. To test his extraordinary evaluating capacities, the Canadian research team are going to put him through a series of tests. First exercise. Julien has to estimate the circumference of this circle.
Wow.
See the circle all around us?
All of this is 25 meters.
25.
The experience is all the more difficult because it's timed.
20 meters.
20 meters. The white pipe that goes from here all the way until there, how long is it?
10 meters.
10 meters.
The result goes beyond all expectations. Julien's answers are 90% correct. For the second exercise, we set the camera behind a two-way mirror to avoid distracting Julien.
I'm going to give them to you one by one. You can hold them like that.
This time, he has to estimate the weight of each cup.
200 grams.
Once again, his answers are very close to their real weight.
Un kilo.
1 kilo.
The last experiment is even more impressive. Let's precise that nothing is rigged or prepared. Julien is seeing this computer for the first time.
10.
The point of the exercise is to say how many dots there are on the screen.
35.
Julien has only 2 seconds to see the screen.
130. 145. 230. We don't know exactly how people with pervasive developmental disorder know how to estimate with such precision. Julien is capable of having an exceptional performance, meaning far superior to a normal person, when he counts the number of dots on a screen. And yet, he doesn't practice to do this task every day. He has this capacity, which is probably linked to his pervasive developmental disorder, without having to practice.
Don't be fooled by these little feats. Autism is a dysfunction first and foremost, but also an opportunity for Julien and others like him to develop exceptional faculties. Nevertheless, these surprising faculties must have an explanation. Our investigation continues in the United States in Massachusetts. Meet Matt Savage. Matt was diagnosed with autism when he was very young. Today, he's considered a piano genius. Dave Brubeck himself nicknamed Matt the Little Mozart of jazz. He's played with stars such as Chick Corea, Wynton Marsalis, and Chaka Khan. He composed 9 albums, the first 7 albums between the age of 7 and 14. He's played on many stages, including the famous Blue Note in New York. Question: how does music come to you?
Well, I can't really say for sure. I mean, I don't really have a particular method. You could say it just goes right from the head or from the heart to the fingers. Usually what happens is I think of this one simple idea. This melody just comes out of nowhere, and then I build on it. Because it's not really all that hard to build a tune from melody. So like say if I play, and then I could do like, and then I could create some sort of tune from that.
Matt discovered his talent one night in unusual circumstances. Before that, he was considered to be a problem child. We asked Matt to describe himself when he was 3 or 4. He decided to answer us with music, whereas his mother used words.
When Matt was younger, he was very, very difficult to handle. He was sensitive to sound, and he was sensitive to light, and he was overwhelmed by most things in life. And so he had a lot of tantrums, and he would, it was just very difficult for him to cope with anything. He was diagnosed with pervasive developmental disorder, which is a form of autism. And we didn't know about it at the time because we didn't know anyone who had a child with autism. But he was showing all of the signs of a child with autism.
One night when he was 6 years old, something astonishing happened. In a few hours, Matt discovered the piano. Question: what happened that night?
When Matt was 6.5 years old, he did a therapy to help his ears to normalize sound, and we had given him some musical toys so that he could try to get used to sounds. And we just heard the music coming from downstairs, and it was the first time we heard music from him. He came upstairs to show us his music, and then I took him over to the real piano, and I gave him some beginning music and he taught himself how to play. He learned how to read the music and actually played the piano. I can't explain that. I can't explain.
Astounding. After having worked on Schubert at the age of 7, Matt met with jazz. His improvisational talent explodes, and Matt performs on several stages. Publishes 7 records in a few years. His case is so exceptional that Dr. Darryl Treffert, a world-renowned specialist in Savant syndrome, suggested a new concept, the prodigious savant.
A prodigious savant is a person whose skills are so spectacular and so remarkable that if they were not disabled, we would call them a genius. It's a very high threshold level. And there probably are fewer than 100 such persons living worldwide at the present time, and Matt fits into that very elite group.
I think there is a link between his autism and his talent in that I think that the focus that he has, his ability to hyper-focus on things, allowed him to hyper-focus on music.
Today, Matt is continuing his studies in Boston, and he spends his weekends at his family's biofarm.
It's got the build of a heifer, kind of.
Now that Matt's older, most of the signs of his autism are gone. And he's just like every other teenager, except more polite and sweeter, I think.
Apart from music, Matt has a few talents that are appropriate for Savant syndrome, like exceptional calculating faculties or the ability to act like a living calendar. For example, February 8, 1947 was a Saturday. The question is put to him.
February 8th, 1947. 2/8/47. I think it was a Saturday.
You win!
These abilities can be found in his way of playing and of composing. He never plays the same version twice and starts his concerts without setting a program in advance. His faculties are so exceptional that Darryl Treffert made hypotheses that are mind-boggling.
Well, Matt, like other prodigious savants, seems to have access to a huge store of information and talent and ability that we don't have access to. And for whatever reason, he's able to go, his teacher says about him that he knows things beyond his own existence, which means that he is able to access this huge store of information and data that the rest of us cannot.
The human brain isn't static. It has a 7-million-year-old history. From Lucy, the little Australopithecus, to modern man, the volume of the brain has been multiplied by 2. So, could Savant syndrome show us that this transformation is going to continue? It's possible. The answer may be given one day by the modern techniques of neuroimaging.
2, 0, 9, 12, 0, 0.
6,272.
Very few experiments have been done on the brains of young mental calculation prodigies while they were in action.
6272.
A team of French and Belgian neurologists studied the abilities of this young 29-year-old German mental calculator, Rüdiger Gamm.
377,149,515,625.
Rüdiger Gamm isn't autistic, but he has Savant syndrome, which has given him the opportunity to show his extraordinary capacities in calculus on television. To try to understand Rüdiger's method, researchers have used a very efficient technique of neuroimaging. Positron emission tomography.
4648.
Thanks to radioactive markers, we can visualize the cerebral zones that are activated when Rüdiger does complicated calculations mentally.
1944.
Now let's do the same experiment with this young guinea pig who isn't a whiz at math like Rüdiger. So, where's the difference? The analysis of the results shows that Rüdiger uses an additional memory space, his long-term memory. On the contrary, when we do a calculation, we store the intermediate results of our calculations in a small memory space used for work, called our short-term memory. Thus, Rüdiger benefits from a bigger mental pocket that has greater storage capacities, which benefits his accomplishments.
170.526.
If you prefer, the mental calculator has the same brain as us anatomically, but he uses it differently. That is the difference, and as you will see, it's essential. There's a snowstorm on the little city of Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. This is where Dr. Darryl Treffert lives. This psychiatrist has dedicated 40 years of his life to the Savant syndrome. In 1988, he was a consultant for the film Rain Man, inspired by the real case of the famous Kim Peek, the most famous case of Savant syndrome. Mr. Peek is now deceased.
Kim Peek was the inspiration for the movie Rain Man, and I was a consultant to the movie, and that's where we first met. Kim is what I call the Mount Everest of memory. He has memorized 12,000 books, word for word. He has a factual memory within 15 areas of expertise that simply history, biography, the Bible, you simply cannot stump him. And one of the most amazing things about him is that he reads so quickly. He reads one page with one eye, and he reads the other page with the other eye, and immediately goes to his hard disk, and it's stored there. I keep saying at some point the image has to come up disk full, but it never does. And he simply has continued to astound me with his memory. I think there's no other person who ever lived or is living, or I think will live, with the factual memory that Kim Peek has had.
Even though he's now retired, Darryl Treffert receives dozens of emails daily from worried parents everywhere in the world.
I get emails from all over the world, China, South Africa, Brazil, wherever. Many of them are from parents asking about their child, concerned about their child. I've got a son or daughter who, wondering what to do with the talent that their child has shown. Others come from researchers elsewhere in the world who are looking and sharing cases with me, and I get many of my new cases from other people around the world.
Dr. Treffert has examined hundreds of radiographic snapshots of brains belonging to people with Savant syndrome, and according to him, all of them would have a common characteristic.
The thing that Savant syndrome persons have in common is left brain injury, maybe disease, maybe a traumatic injury or a genetic predisposition, but it is left brain injury.
We're at the heart of the problem. We have to remember that our brain is separated into two specialized hemispheres. To explain this, we called on a famous neuroanatomist, Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. In a hotel between two flights, Dr. Taylor opened her luggage for us.
The human brain is divided into two hemispheres, and they have two very different functions. And so this is a human brain. And so you're looking now at the external surface of the brain. This is the left hemisphere, this is the right hemisphere. And you can see here that they're divided into two halves. And the two hemispheres process different kinds of information in different ways. So the right hemisphere is all about experiencing the present moment. It's all about right here, right now. In the right here, right now, there are no boundaries. Everything is perceived as energy. And so the atoms and molecules just experience the energy and they blend with one another so that there's the big picture vision. So the right hemisphere thinks in pictures and it's all about the right here, right now. The left hemisphere takes that present moment experience and then breaks it down into details. And part of the details is our language, our ability to speak, our ability to make sound, our ability to place meaning on that sound. And part of that sound is my ability to say, I am. I am an individual. And as soon as I say I am, then I exist separate from all of the energy around me. So the two hemispheres work together in order for us to have a single perception of reality, but we actually have two very different machines processing information in two very different ways.
Now let's remember that Dr. Treffert noticed that people who have Savant syndrome all have a lesion in the left hemisphere of their brain. And he gives us what he considers to be the key of the problem.
Well, I found in the work that I've been doing that the right brain compensates for the left brain injury. It does that through a process of rewiring, recruiting areas that are available, or releasing dormant capacity within the right hemisphere.
According to Dr. Treffert, it's by drawing dormant aptitudes from a reservoir in the right side of the brain that people who have Savant syndrome can achieve these prodigies that seem to be way out of our reach. And the most fascinating part is that these aptitudes would exist in all of us. To prove it, Dr. Treffert has examined cases of people who have had the same lesions as people with Savant syndrome after an accident. Here's the surprise. They also have awakened uncommon faculties.
Well, probably one of the best examples of acquired Savant syndrome was Alonzo Clemens. He had a severe fall as a child, and after that, his tremendous sculpting ability literally exploded on the scene. He's gone on to be a world-famous sculptor now, and that injury allowed him access which he otherwise would not have had. And so there is that huge store of material in all of us. And the question is, how can we access that without having an injury or some kind of central nervous system catastrophe? And that's where our research is leading us these days.
Among these attempts, Darryl Treffert invites us to discover the methodology of the American author Betty Edwards in her book, Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Translated worldwide, it's made drawing possible to those who didn't think they could draw. The principle is to disconnect the left side of the brain, which analyzes while you're drawing. and allow students to access and express the potential of the right side of their brain.
Not just drawing skills, but to vision and creativity, which was not there earlier. I think sometimes just spending some time, what I call rummaging around in our right hemisphere, just consciously and deliberately spending some time in those areas of our existence that we ordinarily trivialize or don't pay attention to until we retire maybe and say, well, now I've got the time to do that. But why wait that long? It's like taking a side trip instead of using the freeway or the tollway all of the time, and simply rummaging, what I call rummaging around in the right hemisphere, gives us that sort of access.
Of course, talking about the left side and the right side of the brain is a simplification. Our brain isn't a map, as people used to assume naively in the last century. It's characterized by an astonishing plasticity, which localizes on the right side of the brain functions that are on the left side in other people. Nevertheless, in most cases, the functions of analysis and logical reasoning are on the left, whereas visual and intuitive functions are on the right.
We are a left hemisphere society. We depend on our left hemisphere. It serves us well. Logical, sequential thinking, language, things that have served us well. They serve us so well that we begin to use only that well-worn pathway, sort of to the neglect of the rest of the brain, the right hemisphere. Yeah, some people call that the tyranny of the left hemisphere, because it is so dominant, and it is so well used and so easily used by us that it's to the neglect of the right hemisphere.
If there was an apostle of the right side of the brain today, it would indeed be Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. What happened to her is incredible. One morning in 1996, she was the victim of a vascular accident, which drowned the left side of her brain in blood.
I had a major vascular problem in this region of my left hemisphere. And it started very small when a blood vessel exploded, and then it got larger and larger. And over time, then as the blood clot got bigger, I had more and more deficit to the point where I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life.
Since Dr. Taylor is a neuroanatomist, she describes with an astonishing lucidity her journey that brought her from the lesion in her left hemisphere to progressively discover the potentials of her right hemisphere.
When I lost my left hemisphere and I lost all the details of my life, part of the details is my job and my relationships and my past emotional baggage, all of the things about my life that brought me stress. So when I lost my left hemisphere, all my stress about my existence went away. And in the absence of that, I felt this incredible awe of the beauty of what I was as a living being, and I just shifted into the consciousness of the present moment, which was wonderful. So the change that's happened in me is I moved into a space of loving, open, compassionate way of being in the world, a celebration of life, a gratitude for what I am as a living being. And now I go into the world, and recovery to me meant recovering skills of my left brain so that I could again communicate. I could again interact with others, but I now come from the consciousness of the right hemisphere.
For several years now, Dr. Bolte Taylor has been spreading the good word about the right side of the brain. The side of the brain that she says is programmed for love and being open with one another. We're no longer in the realm of science only, but of an almost spiritual quest based upon the revelation that her accident gave her.
I think that religion does give us access to the right side of our brain. It allows us to transcend ourselves, to look at bigger issues, our existence, meaning, and gets us away from the turmoil of the left hemisphere, the busyness and the tyranny, what I call the tyranny of the left hemisphere. It takes us to a different place where we can be more relaxed, where we can be more insightful and introspective, And people are searching for that. We're so tied up with what's happening in our left hemisphere and the busyness and the chatter of that. We seek a place of more tranquility and peace. And that is to be found in the right hemisphere and not the left.
The right hemisphere is wired for spirituality. It's the big picture experience of all that is. It is the tool that we use in order to feel boundless, because there are no boundaries there. And in the absence of boundary, we become at one with all that is, and in that space, that is when we would feel our connection to something that is greater than we are. Call that Buddha, call that God, call that Allah, call that whatever you want to do it, but we are wired for it in the consciousness of our right brain.
Let's make a bet here. If, as Dr. Treffert claims, Western civilization has been founded on a wildly rational and analytical vision of the world, typical of the left side of the brain, then it could be different in the East. But is this indeed true? We're in India, in Haridwar. In this city on the banks of the Ganges, the Kumbh Mela ceremony is being held this year. The biggest religious gathering in the world. 70 million pilgrims converge. The most important event of the pilgrimage is the immersion into the river, which symbolizes the washing away of their past lives. These monks have a rigorous practice. Their goal is to reach a state of enlightenment. Also referred to as an awakening or a liberation. But regardless of the term, only a few reach this state. We're in the midst of another enigma of the brain, altered states of consciousness. The study of these altered states of consciousness is difficult to do without a minimum of practice. Christine Lesconf chose Aikido. She's a psychologist at the Paris 11 University and published a very well-researched study on altered states of consciousness.
Altered consciousness is another way of being in the world, of understanding reality, your body, in time and in space. There are different states that go from extreme excitement, like in the positive trance, where the body and the mind are completely agitated, to states of ecstasy, where we try to make these states of consciousness disappear through the complete immobility of the body. It's an astonishing state of extreme peace and tranquility. It's a state that's very difficult to attain. We feel it sometimes, and then it escapes. And the goal is to retain it for as long as possible.
Now we're going to try to discover what can go on inside the mind of a yogi or of a person in the midst of mystical enlightenment. This young devotee from Haridwar is very clearly aware of it.
Your meditation begins from closing the external and getting to the internal presence. The awareness of the total awareness of the body is lost, it dissolves. So like you took the temple as a tool, but this temple is no more now. So you are only in this vibration, this energy, the presence, you feel, and this presence is of peace, harmony, love, compassion, totality, and just like a sky, infiniteness is there. You are not different from others. Then you don't become like he is this or that. So you become one with all.
This is what is astonishing. When we put the two images next to each other, we realize that we're very close to Jill Bolte Taylor's description of her state after her cerebral hemorrhage. Are the same regions of the brain concerned?
So we have to close, you see, we have to close our left body. And I have closed my left body and put it as a close, as a lock. Locking my left part means locking all my movements into the world externally. And that brings my, inner peace. So I move with completely closing and grounding myself from the left and getting myself to the, to the right brain. And that brings peace. So then you close completely the left and let the right to be completely open, and then the flow is happening.
It's clear that the neurologist and the young yogi are describing more or less the same phenomenon, except that the yogi is looking to reach a new state of consciousness, whereas Jill Bolte Taylor experienced it after an accident. Here is a new question. If these altered states of consciousness can be described by those who are living them, then can they be observed by science? The answer is in these images. In 1995, Dr. Andrew Newberg from the University of Pennsylvania was the first to have the idea of scanning the brains of Buddhist monks meditating and of Catholic nuns praying. What he discovered goes way beyond religious experience.
We have found a lot of different changes that go on in the brain when people are engaged in a spiritual practice like meditation or prayer. And among those changes, one very important change occurs in the frontal lobes, right behind the forehead. This area becomes very active during meditative and prayer states because the person is intensely focused on their particular spiritual object or their spiritual goal. The other part of the brain that is also very involved is located toward the back top part of the brain called the parietal lobe. This part of the brain is our orientation area. It helps us to connect ourselves to the world, to orient ourselves in the world, and it makes a lot of sense that when people engage in a deep spiritual practice like meditation or prayer, that this part of the brain should be affected because they have this tremendous feeling of oneness, deep connectedness with God, ultimate reality, or whatever their spiritual goal happens to be.
In other words, the experience of meditation puts functions that belong more to the left side of the brain to sleep, functions that concern distinction, positioning, or orientation. And it facilitates a state that belongs more to the right side of the brain, a state of unity and fusion with the universe. The practice of Aikido allows Christine Lesconf to show very concretely that the search for certain mental states has an effect on our physical aptitudes.
The way we think, the way we direct our attention, is reflected in our posture, in our actions. We can see it easily when we do ki-aikido exercises, like those I'm about to show you. If I'm scared, if two dangerous people attack me and try to lift me up, for example, when I try to defend myself, I'm very vulnerable. They can lift me easily. Now I change my state of mind. I concentrate differently. I modify my consciousness. I'm concentrated on the center of my body. I'm relaxed and I'm totally anchored into the ground. No one can lift me up. So they're now going to try and lift me up. It becomes very difficult and even dangerous for them. Here's another example. I have 6 people in front of me, and I want to push them. So I do it hard, I push hard. I can push the first one, but the others don't move. So now I'm going to change my state of mind and the way I carry my intention, my consciousness. I let myself go completely, and I think about the last person, Adam, who's at the end of the line. Here I go. I'm totally relaxed, but I'm thinking all the way until the end. All the way until the last one, and it's him that I'm pushing. All the way calmly. This is another example. They're trying to knock me down. I'm resisting physically against them, and they manage to knock me down. Now, I'm going to act differently. I'm going to concentrate differently, so that they're going to push each other. I completely relax. I'm stretching until I decide to get rid of them.
If Aikido shows how a mental state can act upon the physical, then we can also show how mental states can reinforce certain moral values by studying with an MRI the cerebral activity of yogis during a state of compassion. Antoine Lutz discovered that the neural circuits of people who are well trained in compassion had transformed.
So what we found that the insular cortex was more activated for expert practitioners than novices, while they were listening to emotional sounds like the voice of a distressed woman. And this finding is important because the insular cortex plays a critical role in feelings, and it also plays a role in empathy, which is a capacity that you have to feel the emotion of others.
Remember that during the state of meditation, the subject puts to sleep the functions that separate him from the world, to the advantage of functions like relations, sense of connectedness, empathy. At this point, we discover that virtues like compassion, charity, altruism can be learned and developed, just like learning a musical instrument.
So the general message here is that experience can change the brain, and we already knew that's the concept of neuroplasticity. But what is new in this research is that the training of specific quality like that gets compassion or concentration or mindfulness could produce also a change in the brain and behavior.
These studies lead us to an important change in our point of view. If our most fundamental values and even mystical feeling have a cerebral translation, then we can dream along with Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor about the hopeful future of human development.
The person who has control of both of their hemispheres has their own freedom. They have true personal freedom to choose moment by moment who and how they want to be in the world. And there are times when it's appropriate for me to come into the world as a compassionate, loving, open, curious person, ready to celebrate life with you, ready to create with you. And then there's also skills of the left brain that I want to use. My ability to create language, my ability to categorize and organize and get things done. At the same time, I think that the future person will come from the consciousness of the right hemisphere. They will begin with the intention of I am open, I am free, I am whole, so are you, you're the life force power of the universe, what can we create together? So I think that there will be more cooperation, more celebration, more basic joy inside of us. I think our stressful circuitry will go way down, and I think humanity will be healthier.
In India, we traveled further to the north, all the way to Dharamsala. It's in this city in the mountains that most Tibetan refugees live. Despite our efforts and despite his willingness, we unfortunately did not manage to meet the Dalai Lama. We interviewed one of his close collaborators, the Geshe Lama. He confirmed the great interest that the Dalai Lama has for scientific knowledge about the mind.
About 3 decades, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been having dialogue with the leading scientists in the world, and they have been, contributing a lot to each other. And particularly, His Holiness the Dalai Lama has contributed immensely in the field of science by, exposing them the rich Buddhist, scientific approach.
So, maybe evolution will be found at the crossroads between modern exploration of the brain and Eastern traditions.
Buddha himself has emphasized a lot on the nature of mind and how it can be developed and improved and developed to an unlimited extent.
The Geshe Lama has summarized this possible evolution in these words: humanity is still in the mind's infancy. We asked our guests to comment about this observation using their words.
We are in the infancy of the brain, and it is a tremendous frontier. I think the frontier lies in trying to explore the right hemisphere that we've largely ignored, and now I think we've come in to realize it is a tremendous opportunity for us to look at it in depth.
I would say that we are young. I would not say that we are infantile, because I think we were more in an infancy before we really developed the skills of the left hemisphere. We had to develop the skills of the left hemisphere in order to become what we will become, evolve into. We're on the way to balance, I believe, of the 2 hemispheres. So we have now really developed the left skills. It's now to recognize and honor the skills of the right hemisphere so that the 2 hemispheres become balanced. And at that point, then, we will be whole-brained individuals functioning from both hemispheres. And then we will reach our level of, in my opinion, evolution.
But part of what I think is so important is that we integrate both what we can learn from science by looking at the brain itself and what we can understand from the spiritual, subjective experiences that people have, and to find a way to integrate them together. Some people call this the field of neurotheology because it's a way of linking science and religion. But I think that this is absolutely essential for us to understand all the different ways in which our mind works and how it can help us to better understand who we are as human beings and how we deal with the universe around us.
To conclude, let's go back to France. This is Neurospin, located on the Saclay Plateau. It was created by the Atomic Energies Commission. To date, it's the most powerful center of neuroimaging in the world and has gigantic magnets. By exploring the most secret regions of our brain that are still hidden in the shadows today, can tomorrow's science reveal one of its hidden sides? Will it help humanity make a giant leap forward? Why not? Although it's true that we are in the mind's infancy, it's without a doubt that science can and will help us grow up.